Okay, we should just say a word or two about significant figures or decimal places in questions and how careful you have to be and when you have to be particularly careful about taking account of these when you're giving your answers. Unfortunately, it's not something that is easy to generalize about. You just have to read questions very carefully. There are some things you have to know. So we've talked about titrations and said that when you're reporting results from titrations, they have to be 2 decimal places. Same with values off a balance. If the balance reads the 2 decimal places, the values you write down must always be 2 decimal places. More generally, in questions you're just given a bunch of numbers, and usually it's the significant figures that are limited by the numbers you're given. So for example, suppose you've got a bunch of data like this, and you're going to calculate MC delta T in order to go on and then calculate delta H for a reaction. Then the question is, well, how, that's equal to Q, the heat transferred, and the question is, what's the level of precision that we can put on Q? How many significant figures can we quote Q to? So you look at the numbers that are fed in and you say, right, that is 3 significant figures. Okay, 1, 3, 7. This one, which comes from your data sheet, is also 3 significant figures. 1, 2, 3. But this is only 2 significant figures. 38 degrees C. So what that means is that when you come to calculate Q, even though you know these, if you like, relatively precisely to 3 significant figures, because you only know this one to 2, that's what limits how precisely you can know the number. So Q should be limited to 2 significant figures, because one of the data numbers that you put in was limited to 2. So that's the general rule, that you look at all the numbers you feed in, whichever one you know to the lowest number of significant figures, that's what controls the limit on your answer. Now, having said that, if the question doesn't say anything about writing an appropriate number of significant figures, it won't matter if you put more than that. What will matter is if you overround. Okay, so the golden rule is you never put fewer than what you think is the appropriate number. Usually, if you put more than the appropriate number, they don't mind. But if the question says give it to an appropriate number of significant figures, then that's the way you work it out. Okay, so you just have to be really careful in the way you read the question there. Okay, so here's another example. If we've got 2.934 grams of sodium chloride in 25.0 cm cubed of solution, and the question is, what's the concentration in moles per dm cubed? So we do the normal thing. We think, right, we've got to turn that mass into moles. So we get moles is mass over mR, which is 2.934 divided by 58.5 is the mR of sodium chloride, which comes to 0.050154 moles. Now I've put down far too many significant figures there. That's the first significant figure, right, because it's the first non-zero number. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant figures. We can't possibly know the number that well because you can see the numbers that we fed in weren't known that precisely. But that's what I would generally do at intermediate stages in a calculation, is keep too many significant figures and then just round at the end if you need to. That way you'll get the same numbers that the people who set the questions expected you to get, so there shouldn't be any question about is your slightly different number wrong, and it certainly will make sure that you're not accused of sort of over rounding as you go through. So if you can keep that number in your calculator, then so much the better. but otherwise write down too many significant figures at intermediate stages like that. So that's our moles of sodium chloride, and so then we can get that the concentration is moles over volume in dm cubed, which is 0.050154 divided by 0.0250, and that comes to 2.0062 moles per dm cubed. Now, if the question didn't say anything about the precision required for your answer, you could leave it like that and it would get marked right. That would be fine. If it said, give your answer to 3 significant figures, then obviously you would have to round that to 3 significant figures. So there's the first one, there's the second one, there's the third one. But remember, if the one that follows it is 5 or more, that rounds up. Okay, so you look at the figure that comes after the dividing line. If that's 5 or more, that one rounds up to 2.01 moles per dm cubed to 3 significant figures. Don't, whatever you do, say 2.0062, oh that's near as damn it 2, and just give your answer as 2 moles per dm cubed, because then you've rounded to 1 significant figure, and that's a horrible thing to do. So don't be tempted by those zeros and think, oh, that means that the deviation from 2 is so small that I should ignore it, because you shouldn't. It's real. It's small, but it's real. Okay, the more difficult question is, what if it says round to an appropriate number of significant figures based on the data you're using? So what you have to do then is go through and look at all the numbers that you fed in, and you say, right, that one is 4 significant figures, but that is only 3. That's why it says 25.0. If it had just said 25, you'd have had to say 2 significant figures. But because it says 25.0, you know it's 3 significant figures. That's why those point zeros are important, because they tell you about the precision to which you know the number, and you need that when you're working out how precisely you can quote the numbers that you calculate from it. Okay, so we've got 1 to 4 significant figures, 1 to 3 significant figures. We needed the MR, which is also 3 significant figures for that, and we needed the volume, which we've already used. In fact, 25.0 is 3 significant figures. So those were the 3 numbers that we fed in, and as we said before, it doesn't matter that you know that one to 4, because you don't know these ones to 4, so you're limited to 3 in your answer. So that again is going to be where your cutoff comes, and that rounds up to 2.01. So that would be an appropriate number of significant figures. Okay, so you need to be careful. Read the question carefully. If it says appropriate number, that's the process you go through. Otherwise, err on the side of leaving too many. You will always get penalised for over-rounding.